Hey guys, welcome back to VGC. This is our first ever off-the-record chat on this channel. As you know, here at VGC, we tend to try and keep opinion away from fact, but today we thought we'd get online on Zoom, as everyone else is doing these days, and chat about video games and the industry. And I've got two top-class guests, basically. The guy who actually gave me this position in the first place, VGC's Andy Robertson, the site editor, and Chris Dring, the publisher from GamesIndustry.biz. Guys, how are you doing today? You all right?
Excellent, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, actually. Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about video games. And
looks like a sunny day in Manchester.
Oh, of course, it's always a sunny day in Manchester, or my camera exposure's up too high. Probably that one, actually. It's a bit drizzly, actually, which is Manchester in a nutshell. Where are you? Are you both based in London?
Yeah, on the outskirts, isn't it?
I'm in Cambridgeshire, and it's baking. Absolutely baking out there.
Well, we've got all parts of the country covered, all the important parts anyway, at very least. We've got loads to talk about today, as you can see by the topics below the screen, if I remember to put them there at very least. We're going to start today with the big Nintendo news and obviously the big Sony news. Now, it's been a big week for first-party games. They've both released today. Paper Mario, The Origami King, and Ghost of Tsushima. Obviously, we reviewed both on VGC as well. Andy, you've had a hands-on experience with Paper Mario. And you've also had some Nintendo, you've had an interview as well with the development team this week, haven't you? What's the reaction been like critically for this in terms of, did you get any idea of how Nintendo feel about the reaction critically as well?
I couldn't really answer that one, but it's been, the game's been well received. Obviously some reviews are more positive than others.
Yeah.
There's kind of, you get the impression that there's a split in the audience somewhat, that which you're going to see more and more in games, I think, as the medium grows more mature. People of my age remember the older original games, which were a bit more like, RPG type games.
Yeah.
Whereas recently the series has gone in more of an adventure direction. So there's a little bit of a split, I think, between people who were kind of hoping for more like experience points and leveling and that sort of thing, whereas the kind of a different audience who were playing just for the story and the great script.
Is it?
Sorry, go on.
Is it fair to even call it an RPG anymore? Because it's like, I think it's been like 4 games based around this more adventure-y kind of mechanics since the first 2. Is it better to maybe just to review it as what it is now, I guess? Because a lot of people...
Well, that's definitely what Nintendo would tell you. I mean, they Tanabe-san, the producer, said in my interview this week that he called it an adventure game. This is an adventure game. And he also said it was very difficult to kind of please fans who would be going into that expecting a pure RPG experience. That's certainly, as someone, I mean, I reviewed it for VGC, so that's kind of what it feels like to me, that it is, especially if this is the 3rd installment now that has gone in this direction. So you're spanning almost a decade of games.
Yeah.
I think they've kind of, they've moved on from like large portions of that genre. And certainly it feels like, I don't think the game would lose much at all if it just kind of, forgoed the turn-based battles entirely.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, there's no like experience points or anything like that. I mean, you're a big fan, aren't you, Chris? What do you think?
You've got it as well, haven't you?
Well, yeah, I've not played the new one yet. I did not like, I didn't like Sticker Star. I thought that was a really, really disappointing game. I don't even understand the point of turn-based battles when you don't get anything out of them. It feels like a chore to slog through that kind of stuff. Super Paper Mario did it quite well in that it was effectively a platformer. And it's like different to the way those games were before and afterwards. I do miss the old Paper Marios. I really do. And I think with the uncertainty around the future of the Mario and Luigi series, you'd have thought maybe they were going to go back down the RPG route. But I mean, I've read some of the reviews, and some of them seem to think that the route that Paper Mario is trying to go down, it's almost got to that point now where, okay, we get where this is now, and it's all right. It's it's still funny, it's still charming. It's got all that kind of that thing about it.
It's definitely a more confident game than the last 2.
Yeah, I think the thing is, because I'm obviously thinking about it from a commercial perspective, and Paper Mario has never been that much of a successful hit game. I mean, particularly the first one came out quite towards the end of the N64's life, and it's never really found an audience since then in a significant way. But it had that fan base that's core, and I think that's the thing. Like the people that like Paper Mario tend to be core Nintendo fans. And that's why I'm surprised they go down a little bit more of a casual sort of family route, particularly this year, where most of the stuff that's coming out is going to be more appealing to more casual Nintendo fans, and there's not that much for the hardcore. So I guess when this game started development, they wouldn't have known that. But I think that's the thing with Paper Mario. I just think I think Nintendo fans will want something different, and I think Nintendo fans are the ones that buy this.
Could there be an element of the Switch boom with this? Because obviously we've seen that effect on a few IPs. Obviously, like Breath of the Wild sold like hotcakes. Mario Kart continues to be this absolute behemoth in the charts. And also we've seen Animal Crossing reach new levels, really, of fandom, I guess, haven't we? Because the Switch has been this monster for Nintendo, and obviously much more successful than the Wii U, for example. Could it be that this is actually a good time, given the pandemic, given everyone's locked at home, for a Paper Mario maybe to re-establish itself as something new entirely? Do you reckon there's any chance of it actually maybe having that kind of maybe finding a more mainstream audience?
I think it depends on whether Nintendo wants it to, or Nintendo feels it has the capacity to. Last year they did it. Last year they went, let's go big on Luigi's Mansion, right? And I mean, Luigi's Mansion 2 did better than expected. Luigi's Mansion 1 was obviously a game, and they just went, let's go big on it. Let's make a booth about it at E3. Let's make it our big Christmas game alongside Pokemon. And it worked. And that game has done real big numbers. And they could go down that route with Paper Mario. But, I mean, looking at, I don't know, it's a summer game. It's out in this type of window. It's a 7 out of 10 by the looks of it overall, which is okay. I'm not getting that that's the big objective here. I don't feel that Nintendo expect this to be joining that sort of elite 6 million plus selling fan series. But but then at the same time, though, as you say, it's the Switch. Audience is huge. Everything is selling very well at the moment. So it will probably do better than the more recent Paper Mario, particularly the last one, which I suspect nobody bought because it was on the Wii U. But it will probably do okay. I think it would have done better if it was like, if Nintendo could start joining up these Mario things they're doing this year, which I know we're going to talk about later. Yeah. But it feels like all the Mario stuff they're doing is quite disparate at the moment.
Do you think that might have been the plan, Andy, initially? We'll get onto the Mario 35-year celebration later and obviously hold that forward. But do you think maybe this was the initial plan to kind of announce it around that, but obviously the pandemic's taking its course? Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Without going too much into that topic, that's the answer. I imagine they definitely plans to have that as part of a larger kind of roster.
I wonder if then maybe when all that kind of comes out, which we'll obviously very certainly will do, and when it comes out, if that might have a residual effect on Paper Mario anyway, it might be one of those things where it keeps selling down. But I guess we'll see. One thing that obviously has been released as well this week is Ghost of Tsushima. It's had a similar-ish, I would say, critical reception to Paper Mario in terms of, like, a lot of people think it's a good game, but not necessarily an incredible game, depending on which review you read, of course. But Chris, what do you think the expectation from Sony is on this game in terms of sales figures? Obviously, it's coming towards the end of the generation. You've got PlayStation 5 on the horizon, and the reviews have been, decent. Do you think PlayStation are expecting big numbers from this?
We don't expect Last of Us style thing. It's a big first-party game. It's been marketed quite well. It's going to sell. I mean, I'm actually quite excited because the two things that are the hottest property in games retail in particular is PlayStation and Nintendo. Right? Yeah. They release a game, it gets to number one. Release a new game, and they've both released a game in the same week. I don't know which one's going to be number one this week, and that for me is like, which one?
It keeps you up at night, right?
I mean, I probably back PlayStation a little bit because they've got a bigger install base, but it could go either way. Particularly when you look at a sort of mid-level Nintendo game, they tend to do about 60,000 copies in the UK when it launches, and when you look at a mid-level PlayStation game, which I guess this is 7 out of 10, that also does around the same. So it's interesting, and they're both being. There's lots of ads for both going around. I'm interested in that perspective. But this isn't the 10 million. PlayStation. What's really cool about PlayStation's generation is that they've never had this before, right? Every other generation, they've had one game maybe that gets to 10 million sales, and it's always Gran Turismo. It's always been Gran Turismo. This generation, Uncharted got to 10 million, God of War got to 10 million. Horizon got to 10 million, Spider-Man got to 10 million, Last of Us Remastered got to 10 million, and so in actual fact GT Sport didn't. but it's it got to 8 million, did very well. But you see first party PlayStation games are now a real big thing. They've done that PlayStation Studios badge, all about the cinematic beautiful thing, and they're big sellers now. PlayStation, like a Nintendo badge, it does sell loads, so it'll do really well. But I don't expect.
Yeah, can it live up to those standards? Because that's some big numbers, obviously. Like PlayStation had a bunch of big hitters having in their first party exclusives, but can Sucker Punches like Ghost of Tsushima actually live up to that 10 million standard? It just feels a bit optimistic for me. I can't see him getting there because I don't think the reception.
It feels more like a Days Gone comparison, really, doesn't it?
Days Gone.
And what did that do in the end, sales-wise? I mean, I'm not sure if you guys know or not.
Not 10 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it made its money back to you. Probably didn't. But it's all right. You need those variety of games. Not all of them can be the best game.
I mean, it's worth noting as well that those are both new IPs as well.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
I mean, all of the games that you listed off there that have sold 10 million are, other than Horizon, are established IP.
What did The Last of Us do at the end of the PlayStation 3 generation? Because obviously that was, you forget that was a PlayStation 3 game sometimes. It seems such a long time ago. But how did that do in terms of sales at that time? Is anyone sure?
I did know this. Not 10 million. It did really well. Like Uncharted was like growing with every franchise, and every game. And The Last of Us came out towards the end of a life cycle. Like releasing a game particularly a AAA game in the last year of a console, the last couple of years is it's kind of death for that game. Usually, it's not happening for The Last of Us Part 2. But if you look at that, you go back in time. There's always a game that. It might be a game that bucks the trend, but I talked about Paper Mario coming out at the end of the N64 Live, sort of Conker at the end of the Xbox Live. These games sort of come right at the end. They get quite good reviews, but nobody buys them because they're all looking.
It feels like it'll be a really interesting experiment this year with both new consoles being. I mean, Xbox has said that it'll run every Xbox One game that isn't dependent on Kinect, right? I mean, that seems like an interesting experiment to see what impact that has. I mean, you could imagine even from a marketing point of view, there's nothing stopping them. I mean, Last of Us 2 and Tsushima will come to PS5, right? But in the meantime, there's nothing stopping them sticking a PS5 badge on the boxes. Yeah,
I don't know if people rush out and buy a PS5 and get a brand new fancy console and go, right, I'm going to get this PS4 game with it. I many years ago, I had a mate of mine, and he was really angry with me in that. Remember, the Game Boy Advance came out with like a port of Mario Brothers 2 or something like that.
That's that.
And I went out and bought that, and my mate was like, I don't know if I want a GBA. It's only got a port on it. And I went, well, get it, and then buy this game on the GBA, which is Alone in the Dark. And he got Alone in the Dark on the GBA because on the Game Boy Color.
That's a classic.
It got on for the GBA, and he was just gutted. He's like, everyone's playing these new fancy GBA games, and I'm playing on a Alone in the Dark. And I think that's just true.
I know, I'm with your friend there. That's you've done him over with that recommendation.
In terms of new consoles, then we may also get on to the next point because it's come out this week. The Xbox One, Xbox One X, and the old digital edition is being discontinued. Now, there's been loads of rumors about the Series S. Is that the official rumor title? Or is it just one of those things that we've all made up ourselves? But either way, Chris, I presume this is a massive hint that this kind of lesser model, I guess, in terms of hardware spec, could be coming, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, yes. I don't know. I don't know, and I know this. We've all seen documents and stuff. Is when that's coming. But it's Microsoft's so confusing. Right? What they're doing is really cool, and I'm really on board with it. I think it's interesting, and I think they're doing some fascinating stuff. But they've got these. When you think about it from a consumer perspective, they have like 5 different subscription models going live right at the moment, and by the end of the year, at one point, they look like they're going to have 5 different types of Xbox you could buy, which is like, well, how do you explain that? It's Xbox One, and there's Xbox One S all digital, Xbox One X, Xbox Series X. I've missed one somewhere. Xbox, and then
just throw the X or rest somewhere, and you'll be fine.
Series S, whatever that is. There's 5 of those, and then you've got Game Pass for Xbox, Game Pass for PC, Ultimate Game Pass, All Access, Xbox Live, and you sort of try explaining that to somebody popping into a shop when they're allowed to, and trying to tell them. My
son wants an Xbox for Christmas. Which one do I get him? How do you even answer that question these days? Well, it depends. Is he all digital? Does he like
how many X's do you want in the name?
Yeah. Do you want X squared, please? Chris, one thing I would say before, and Andy, is like, how does this? How do Microsoft approach this in the marketing thing? Because I'll be honest, I've always been a Nintendo and PlayStation kind of fanboy throughout my life. But the one thing I've always known that Xbox have done and Microsoft is they've always pushed this whole, we're powerful, we're strong, we're the most impressive piece of technology in the games console market. And all of a sudden they're going to release this like oh, this is just a slightly, less powerful version, but get it anyway. How would you market that? And like, as a version that people are going to be excited by, because it goes against what I've always thought their ethos was going to be in the first place.
Can I jump in on that one?
You go on.
I think obviously the thing about Series S or Lockhart or whatever it's going to be called, obviously is that we don't ultimately know the full details. We only know that, what various journalists, including myself, have seen in, documentation and what have you. I think the interesting thing about this machine compared to, say, the original Xbox compared to Xbox One X, from what I gather from talking to people who are working on it, is that it sounds like it's only really going to be the GPU that's the major difference, the video card. Because the biggest difficulty with doing cross-gen last generation or previous generations is that obviously there's this huge jump in kind of CPU, GPU between the two machines. Yep. And the real struggle is not really, that looks slightly prettier than that version. It's more like, well, we don't have enough memory on this older machine, so the environments can only be so large. There can only be so many enemies on screen. You can only have so many features. The AI can only be so good. I mean, I can tell you from having gone and worked in game development for a couple of years, that was the thing that surprised me the most, really, is just how tough it is, like in terms of memory. Like, that's the biggest constraint that I could see from an amateur position for making a game, like trying to get these bloody games to work within the memory allotment you've got. So from what I hear, and this might obviously change, is that as I kind of said at the top, the biggest difference between the X and the S is going to be the GPU. So if it's essentially, and that's been backed up by some other journalists recently as well. If the biggest difference between the two machines is essentially the GPU, and it's got the same CPU horsepower, then you could theoretically, like, the restraint wouldn't really be there so much, because you could still have these big environments, you could still have these systems, you could still have these enemies on screen. They just look a little bit worse. I mean, it's like having a PC with a slightly lower down tier NVIDIA card compared to the big TI ones, right? I mean, that's it in theory. I guess
then they need to work on Xbox One.
Yeah, that was what I was going to get to. My bigger concern is that, really. I don't think the S or Lockhart or whatever it is going to be. It's something that anyone should be talking about in terms of holding it back at all. My bigger concern, I'm really conflicted about this actually, is the Xbox One support. Because, I mean, on the one hand, you've got the argument that, Microsoft is releasing all of its first-party stuff on PC already, right?
Yeah. So
it has a scale. And I'm sure if you had an executive from Xbox here right now, they would point out, they'd go, well, we scale on PC. So, but it's still, I really don't know how that's going to play out. And I don't think anyone does. I mean, in a year's time, well, once you could really going to start seeing, developers take advantage of these machines in a year, 18 months' time. PlayStation 4 is going to have these undoubtedly incredible looking, first-party titles. I mean, they've got stuff like, you've got to keep in mind as well, they're going to be able to take advantage of their solid-state drive, which, every developer is crowing about as the huge, innovation on the next gen. And there's going to be, how are they going to look versus Xbox's titles that are going to have to scale? I totally agree with what Phil Spencer says and their messaging in terms of, he talks a lot about, if the medium is really going to move forward, then it needs to break away from these hard kind of hardware barriers. And I get that suggestion, that obviously, you can watch Game of Thrones on your phone, and you buy a new iPhone and all your stuff's there, and I get the huge potential mass market appeal of that. But it seems like it could potentially be a very tricky prospect when put against these amazing PS4 games.
Is that what people want, though? Because personally, coming from someone who's always been a console gamer, really, the thing that appealed to me has always been not letting scale or whatever, all kind of stuff. It's always been the simplicity of everything. Do people really want that kind of? I guess they, to an extent, do want that flexibility too, but Do you not just want the best version of something on a console, not varying versions and all that kind of stuff? Is that even a fair comment?
I think don't people who play games kind of get that you need to buy these new machines, and the reward you're getting for shelling out is you're going to get these. I mean, everyone was. Remember the start of last generation, Chris? Like, every publisher really didn't know how the adoption rate of the new machines of Xbox One and PS4 was going to go, and it went way quicker than expected. But every game at launch was bloody cross-gen. And very quickly they killed them all off when they were like, oh, actually, everyone's jumping across anyway.
Yeah, it was okay. But I mean, so I get to agree with you. Like, I saw that. I don't think that Ratchet and Clank game that PlayStation announced is possible on an Xbox One, Xbox Series S, because it needs to run on an Xbox. Yeah, it's more to do with the fact that you can jump between worlds. It's basically using the SSD to be able to immediately load stuff. And if that game needed to also run on PS4, they couldn't do that, and because then you'd have to wait for a loading screen every single time you set up the portal. And I'm actually, but I think Xbox I think it's fine. I think both of those arguments are fine. I mean, Half-Life Alyx, you need to buy a VR headset. That's a thing built for that piece of hardware. Almost everything Nintendo does is built for their hardware as well. They build things for the device they're making. And it's about the combination of the technological and the software. Xbox isn't about that. And I think that's fine. I mean, they're about software. They're about Game Pass. Like, we're talking about the consoles, like that's the platform. It isn't the platform. Game Pass is the platform. And they want people to play across, multiple different, they want gamers into that service. And they can't sit there and go, right, we're only making games for Xbox One, Xbox Series X now, when they've got 10 million people on Xbox One, Xbox One X and the PC and stuff. They need to bring them with them, and until those people upgrade, they're going to have to keep supporting them in order to keep them subscribing, because that's the most important thing for them. And you can go along with that, right? And I think that's cool, and I think that's great, and I think there's room for both things. And but yeah,
I think just to supplement Xbox's argument as well. I mean, we're obviously been very focused on first party in this conversation, but the whole it's kind of almost irrelevant when you talk about third parties, because they're gonna be creating their content for everything anyway. You look at in the past these really unique hardware features that are introduced that we all think are going to be amazing, just end up getting binned off quite quickly because third parties are not going to use them. I mean, you think about like the touchpad on the PS4, you think about PS Vita, some of the stuff on that. If it's not across platform, then generally it doesn't get widely adopted. And the SSD was something that I was thinking about a lot as well in Xbox's strategy, is that, the really exciting thing about the new consoles at the moment is partly that technology. And, some of the descriptions that Mark Cerny, the PS5 engineer, kind of had in his GDC talk recently, which was, if you speak to kind of world builders in games, they will tell you that it's almost like they're working, very they're on rails in terms they build worlds now knowing like, oh, that can't be that big, that has to be blocked off because the environment will be too big, the memory can't handle it. They've learned for experience that how to build worlds that will run on machines, whereas the ultra fast SSD in the PS5 and to another extent the Series X one potentially kind of blows that open, right? That you can have these huge open worlds that you don't have to have loading corridors and hide stuff around corners. I mean, you can play N64 games and they do that, right? Like the worlds, you see them from high up view. They're very clearly, like cleverly, like have twists and turns and stuff hidden around because you can't have them all on screen at once because the machine won't be able to handle it. And I agree with you, Chris. My first concern was like, well, how's Xbox Series X going to scale that? Because it doesn't scale. So they're going to have Halo Infinite with this huge open vista made possible only by the instant loading of SSD, and then on Xbox One from 2013 they're going to put some walls in. I mean, I just don't see it. I mean, I guess we'll find out in a week.
But
again, coming back to the third party thing, I mean, I was talking to someone recently who was like, I was having this exact same conversation. And he's like, well, the biggest console games in the world at the moment, like your Fortnites and your Call of Duty Warzones, etc. It's kind of like, it doesn't really matter if you load 10 seconds faster than the other guy, you're going to have to wait for him if you're playing an online game,
I guess one company doesn't really have these big kind of SSD problems, really, yes, and live in a kind of more quaint world in this aspect is Nintendo, I guess. So Nintendo basically, they go back to things like their Mario IPs, and the evidence that there's going to be a 50th anniversary celebration of Mario is growing stronger and stronger. Obviously, first as well reported by our very own Andy right here on Videoverse, but it's been delayed. But there's been more and more leaks coming out at the moment. Obviously, the Monopoly Mario, which looks fascinating, by the way, I'm really up for that, has leaked as well online, and all this slightly dodgy kind of password resetting on social media accounts of people. I mean, is that actually legal? I mean, I guess it is, but it's a bit weird for me.
It seems like the sort of thing that they're going to stamp out really quickly.
Yeah, because basically, if you don't know the story, now people have found a Twitter account which looks like it's going to be registered for both F-Zero and obviously Mario's 35th anniversary, and they're essentially requesting the password resets, then seeing this kind of partially asterisked out email address, which looks like it's registered to Nintendo, and people have started to notice that trend. Andy, I mean, is that morally fine? I guess it is, but also
I think if you're as someone who's been doing it this week for these stories, for research purposes, obviously, I can tell you, I think verified accounts won't let you do it.
Okay,
it's only because these are new accounts with no followers. They will tell you. So yeah, it's it's certainly, I've not seen this form of leak before.
It's an interesting one.
New thing, right?
It just goes to show you can't hide anything on the internet, can you? Like, who found this? Did you find this by any chance as well? No, someone else found it.
It was sent in by a reader, actually.
It's interesting.
Sent in by a reader. Don't ask me how they found, like, for example, the F-Zero one, which came up shortly afterwards. People, there just must be a subset of fans out there just trying usernames now.
I think we all agree that they're probably going to announce an F-Zero game on mobile, aren't they? Just to wind everyone up massively.
Extra mechanics.
Do you remember back in the in the 90s when Rogue Squadron hid a Naboo starfighter in that game for like over a year? Nobody knew about it until they released the code, and the code was really clever. They could never do that now. You could never do that now.
Oh no, you can't hide anything anywhere. But I guess also you can't really hide the fact that the 30th anniversary is going to be loads of games, because obviously Andy found that one out. I mean, are we expecting this to be in the much rumoured Nintendo Direct, whenever that's going to be, if we're all still alive by that point?
You'd have to imagine it has to come soon, right, Chris? Because their only game announced for the rest of the year came out today. I think the official anniversary of Super Mario Brothers is in the second week of September.
It's September, because I'm 35 in September as well, and I always remember that Mario is basically me and Mario. We're essentially the same age, so like, I mean, come on, Mario, get on with it. But Chris, it's going to be, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the ridiculous thing is they're announcing all these Mario stuff, like the Lego Mario, the Mario clothes, the Mario Jenga, whatever it is, or at least leaking it out.
That sounds like a joke, but it's actually true. Mario Jenga. It sounds like a punchline, but it's amazing that it's legit.
The Monopoly board says celebration on it. I mean, that's not what it's called.
Do you know? Yeah, I saw that and thought, have they changed that?
Well, no, it's because Nintendo haven't announced the 30th anniversary. The 30th anniversry logo isn't out. Like, every time, Nintendo are really good with this stuff. Like, they did it with the 25th anniversary of Zelda, big logo, big bit of PR, and it all. But it was all about Skyward Sword. It was all building up to Skyward Sword. All the little merchandise, all the Ocarina of Time 3D and stuff. It was building up.
Interesting.
That's from the Uniqlo clothes.
I literally got
I don't imagine that's the official logo, but
yeah.
But Pokemon 20 is a good one. I mean, that's not Nintendo, but they did a very good job of that. And it was all about, hey, Pokemon. Look at all these things we're doing. It all ties together. Nintendo's announced Lego Mario, Lego NES. They've announced Paper Mario, and now all this stuff is just not tying together. And it's because they haven't announced it yet. They haven't because they haven't got the focal point. And the focal point of this Mario anniversary is whatever it's going to be called, All Stars 2. It's Mario 3D World Deluxe. It's all supposed to be building up to that, to a big Christmas campaign, and they haven't announced it yet. So all this stuff.
It's a big shame, really, isn't it? I mean, obviously, it's not the biggest concern during this pandemic, but certainly, you imagine, how exciting that could have been for fans.
E3 as well would have been so much fun with the treehouse.
Big event at E3, and also, the Nintendo theme park was due to be open around now. They could have been talking about this stuff live from in front of Peach's Castle, and it certainly would have been a big thrill for fans. And even like you think back to the year of Luigi, that was a ton of fun. And they will have way more products for this year, obviously.
I'm disappointed. Do you expect? I mean, there's been rumours. I guess there's always rumours on Reset Era, isn't there, about when the Direct's going to be? But there has been some rumours that have been around the 20th or something like that. But you would have thought that would have been announced today if that was going to happen, surely.
Nintendo doing weird things. The last Direct was announced like minutes before they aired it.
I just posted it. Yeah,
that's Nintendo.
That's good fun for news journalists. That is. Bosh, here's a video. You have to go for it.
I mean, it's a weird one because, like, is it even good business sense, or is it just a very Nintendo thing to be able to get away with, to have literally no games announced towards the end of the year? Obviously, this wasn't the plan as such, but they've held off for such a long time now, even during the pandemic. Do you think they're just pretty confident, the investors still, Chris, that this will probably turn out all right for Nintendo, or do you think it's just one of those things that they can't really do anything about at the moment?
I think Nintendo can get away with it. It's a Nintendo, and they're selling lots and lots and lots of Switches at the moment, and they're selling lots and lots of games. And we talked about Animal Crossing earlier. I mean, that game is astronomical, and it's worth noting that their biggest games always seem to be the same games. You can get Paper Mario will come out. You'll get to number 1 or number 2 in the charts. It will be in the top 10 the week after that, and then it will disappear out of the top 10. Mario Kart 8 will still be there the week after, the week after that, and the week after that, and the week after that. So it's like, it's a Nintendo. It's not like PlayStation or other consoles where they release a game that becomes really big and then it fades away. They release a game that becomes big and then it stays there. Yeah. And that's so Nintendo do have big games for Christmas. They will tell you that Animal Crossing is one of those games. This is Mario Kart is one of those games. It's just perhaps from our perspective, from a fan perspective, it's a bit frustrating. We want to know what to get. We want to get excited by something, and there's nothing exciting us. I think that's really the heart of the frustration behind this, and it's really frustrating because a company like Nintendo, they're not like the other companies where they're making games right up until the point where they release them. They finish their games well in advance of release. Yeah, and so you feel like, and they also announce things really late. Like the games are ready.
Paper Mario, for example, wasn't it? It's a good example. That was like a month or two, wasn't it? Beforehand?
Yeah, I remember a great example. I always bring it up, and it's now a bit old example. But when they announced Mario plus Rabbids and Metroid: Samus Returns, they both came out within 2 months of them being announced. But that's just Nintendo can do that, and they do it all the time. So they could have announced this stuff. I mean, I suspect the reason they can't is they've perhaps taken a little longer than the other big games companies to work out how to deal with coronavirus and working from home and that sort of stuff. So it is frustrating, but I don't think it's a concern. Nintendo's got so many games. There have been Christmases before they've released nothing.
Yeah. I just pictured then some kind of Nintendo work from home Bowser kind of thing going on there. Like, who knows what their Direct's going to look like at the start, but I'm sure it'll be wonderfully Nintendo at very least. Are we expecting any surprises from the next announcement? Because obviously, if this is the 35th anniversary and it's in September, is that going to kind of carry them enough into the holiday season, or do you think there'll be a title a little bit later in the year, maybe, or will it be just a bunch of Nintendo titles, Mario titles? Sorry,
I don't think necessarily that they're going to announce Mario games and they release on the anniversary. I think they've got these 2 Mario games, or a collection of Mario games, and then Deluxe, and those games are going to sell really well. And I think it also is a really good way of them getting around the PlayStation 5 and Xbox comparison. People would love to compare them, even though they're all entertainment competes with each other, but people aren't going, oh, I'm not going to get an Xbox Series X this Christmas because I want to buy myself a Switch. Those things aren't conversations people are having. Yeah. But by going on big on Mario, by going historical on Mario, by going, I can see the ads. I can see all these people. I guess they were going to film them in the shopping centres, but now they'll film them in Zoom, talking about their favourite Mario moments, and then there'll be screenshots of his Mario 64 and all this sort of stuff. And then at the end, there'll be a collection of Mario games available on Switch. Buy them now, and I can see all that, and it completely gets around the issue of like PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. They're talking about the future of gaming, talking about ray tracing and all that kind of stuff. That's a different conversation, and that's going to sell them loads of consoles. But Nintendo are going down this nostalgia, character-driven route, and it allows them to basically have a different conversation with consumers. So from a marketing and commercial perspective, it's brilliant. I think the question is, do they have anything for fans? Because
that's what I feel like. I wonder what they're going to do for me, basically.
I never play. I've got Super Mario 3D World. I never got around to playing it beyond the first world. For me, I'm really excited about this Christmas.
So it's a great game.
See, I've never played it either. I think because I didn't really fall in love with the Wii U much. That's the only ones I've missed, really, I guess. So is it that good?
Absolutely fantastic game. Like I actually think it's better than Odyssey.
Wow, that's a big. What about Odyssey 2?
They're adding.
No, sorry. What about Galaxy? Sorry, what about Galaxy? Is it kind of
What is it better than Galaxy?
I mean, I thought that's what I heard when you said Odyssey initially, but obviously,
Odyssey. I mean, the most recent Mario game, Odyssey, 3D World. I actually prefer it. I mean, it's so full of imagination, which you kind of expect from the Tokyo team who kind of handle the Mario games now. It's an embarrassment of ideas in that game. Mechanically, you're almost doing something completely different from level to level, and I hear they're adding tons of new levels and content as well to the game.
Oh, really? That's good to hear.
So even for people who've played it before, that's going to be the big one, I think.
This is the thing with 3D World, in that it sold 5.9 million, just under, copies, which is a lot actually.
It's decent.
That's got to be like half of the Wii U's user base, right?
Probably more somehow. I don't even manage that bit.
For a console that flopped terribly, that's not bad. By Mario standards, it's tiny though, I say tiny. It's not amazing. I think Odyssey has done like nearly 18 million.
I mean, I might be making this up. This might be more perception than fact. Isn't Odyssey the best-selling 3D Mario game by some distance?
Yeah.
I mean, because I thought that there was. I mean, obviously, my I want to say heyday. Hopefully, things don't go downhill from here. But when I was on CVG, like during the kind of the Wii generation, the tail end of the GameCube generation, the perception always seemed to be that, well, the 3D Mario games don't sell, so they're doing 2D ones. I mean, obviously, that was during that period that New Super Mario Brothers was the thing. They were doing that a lot, and they would always sell absolutely crap tons.
Yeah, so New Super Mario Brothers Wii did 30 million copies, which is mental.
30 million?
That's just utterly crazy.
When you look at like Uncharted, we were saying earlier, 40 million or something, you think that's massive, and then you just see the size. Nintendo, they have this impact only.
And Galaxy did 13 million. Now, 13 million is huge.
Yeah.
But when you think that, I think the DS New Super Mario Brothers did even better. I think that did something like it. I think maybe they're roughly the same. So those two games did that sort of level. So that's why I think that story came out. But it's worth noting that 13 million is the most successful 3D Mario game ever, until Odyssey, which is now it's done close to 18 million. But 3D World, partly because of the consoles released on, did under 6. But so that means there is a huge audience. There's there's already like 12 million people that have played Odyssey who didn't play 3D World out there on that platform. And so there's still a huge market. 3D World will feel like a new release. It'll feel like a massive AAA 10 out of 10 new release as well at Christmas for Nintendo. But if you are one of those people, and those 6 million that bought a Wii U, this Christmas is like some ports.
And you have to look at some of the Switch's best sellers, right, to see that that's not necessarily going to be an issue for their bottom line. And then you've already talked about Mario Kart.
No, I think
I'll be honest.
That's the same game I played, 7 years ago, whenever it was.
I'm going to end up buying them as well, probably. As much as I can sit there and go, what are they going to do for my fans? I already know.
It does. I mean, I don't know the details, but it does sound like they're adding quite a lot of content.
That's good to hear. That's good.
Thus deluxe.
You know much about?
And to be honest, I would play it again anyway. It's a fantastic game.
Do you know much about the remasters in terms of graphically? I mean, is it going to be a case where can you see any kind of Link's Awakening kind of rehauls, or is it just going to be more
absolutely not? No,
just a resolution thing, definitely. Just in terms
I think expectations need to be put in check somewhat with those.
Yeah,
because go on, Chris.
I mean, I'm picturing All Stars style. It may be some tweaks, things under the hood, resolution sorted out, controls remapped a little bit, and things like maybe things run a bit smoother. But we shouldn't expect. So they haven't gone in and rebuilt these games. They've taken them and then they've made them. They've done. I wouldn't. But I think going back to what you said though, I think for Nintendo's fans, they're looking for, what am I getting this Christmas that isn't about selling Switches? That isn't about. What am I getting this Christmas that's for me? And I think that's the thing that I'll be waiting to see if Nintendo have anything. Do they have a 2D Metroid? Like, 2D Metroid is never going to sell lots of consoles. They're going to sell lots of copies, but it will please Nintendo fans. And it's or a Zelda thing or anything that sort of will. F-Zero, that will entice. That will I mean,
that's a really interesting rumor. That one. I mean, if you want to use the word rumor, but it's an interesting link because I had to look into some of the key staff on kind of the F-Zero series, and they share quite a few staff with Star Fox. So really, some of these guys haven't been publicly listed on the credits of a game since
what are they doing?
Since 2016. And which doesn't necessarily mean anything, right? I mean, this is massive speculation. I mean, F-Zero, there's not been an F-Zero game. I couldn't believe when I saw this. There hasn't been an F-Zero game for 16 years, like a core one, which is bonkers. But the last time kind of Miyamoto was publicly asked about it was in a 2015 interview. And he said this a few times when he's been asked over the last decade. And it's basically like, I need a mechanical idea for how this will be interesting rather than just another game, and maybe switches that, because all those comments came pre-Switch. But I just see it feels like coming full circle to Paper Mario for some of those fans, because I just want GX too, and they're totally not going to do that. Like, I loved GX. It's a fantastic game, but it's quite it's dumb. No, but it's Sega, right? So it's quite a by the numbers game, but it looked absolutely stunning at the time. It was just perfect arcade fun. It was excellent. But I just don't, if they do another F-Zero, I think there's absolutely no chance they're going to do anything like that. It's going to be, there'll be some mechanical hook, like you control it with your eyeballs or something.
It'll be a Labo, won't it, or something? It'll be like F-Zero X for Labo or whatever, and you'll be there making paper fucking steering wheels around or something like that.
It will have turn-based battles and no experience points.
The thing is, though, I'll go on, because I actually didn't hear any. This is this podcast, the first I've heard there's an F-Zero rumor, so I'm sort of on the fly here. But whatever happened to that retro game? The one that was almost
the rumored one
apparently
about
Star Fox Racing.
Star Fox Racing,
and then
there's definitely a story to tell there, because from what I heard as well, they've been trying to.
What was that Ubisoft game where they got the F-Zero? The Star Fox Starlink. It was when they got the DLC, didn't they, with Star Fox?
So there was a lot of talk about Retro Studios working on a Star Fox racing game, which never happened.
I read a rumor saying that people may have seen a screenshot of that DLC from Starlink, thinking it was a Star Fox racing game. Like that.
Do you know anything about that, Chris? About that Star Fox racing game? Is that real?
So, I mean, the stuff I've heard is that some journalists were even sent to see it and played it. Right? It was that close to being announced. That's what I was. I mean, this is just scuttlebutt. This is just industry talking, and I never heard it from a first-hand source. I definitely never reported it, but it was very much like, so that thing's going to be announced, and then that was 2 years ago. Yeah. And then suddenly they're on Metroid, and I'm like, so what have they been making since Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze? What are they doing? And I know I've heard of other stuff they've been working on, but I thought that was the thing. And I know. So going on this F-Zero rumor, is it possible that that game got put on ice while they got moved over to Metroid, and some other team has picked up Star Fox Racing and rebranded it F-Zero, and that's what we're seeing?
That's an interesting.
That's my lead.
It's an interesting thread, because Nintendo used to have lots of racing games, right?
Yeah.
Like, I used to love. I mean, I miss having lots of racing games. You used to be able to play Mario Kart and Wave Race and F-Zero, and I'm sure there was like a Kirby racing game that I enjoyed.
Stunt Race Effects as well. Stunt Race was it called?
Excite Bike. Yeah, they had tons and tons of racing series. I mean, the other thing that I heard that I always found quite fascinating is that they and this again is secondhand source, might not necessarily be bulletproof, that they had tried several times in the last 2 decades to do something with Diddy Kong Racing. And obviously Donkey Kong Racing was a thing with Rare that ended up dying off when they moved over to Microsoft. But there's the big suggestion was, I believe it's Monster Games. I'm not sure if it is them. It's the guys who did the Excite Bike spin-off, Excite Bots.
Excite Truck is the best game on Wii.
Excite Bots.
They did Excite Truck, right? And Excite Bots are the same studio.
Excite Bots. I'm talking about this particular game. If you go and look at Excite Bots, all of the bots are coincidentally animals from Donkey Kong Country. Like there's a frog and a rhino, and so I saw some suggestion that was repurposed from one of the attempted kind of DK. I mean, and it's fascinating when you look at like that was around Mario Kart Wii times. I mean, how many copies did Mario Kart Wii sell? mean, you're talking
that
without looking, like tens and tens of millions of copies. That's one of Nintendo's best-selling games ever. So I know that they're not really seen as this cynical company in terms of like looking to get a bit of extra slice of the pie in that regard. But they only release one Mario Kart per gen. If they could get another racing series,
they convinced everyone they're not, but they are. Let's be honest. Nintendo know what they're doing.
There's a genre thing, right? Nintendo love have been like seen as a home for a genre. Like they went really hard in the last 15 years on JRPGs, right, and that kind of stuff. They with Xenoblade and in those sort of worlds, in order to try and bring that audience into Nintendo. So if you're a fan of those sort of games, you have to buy a Nintendo. And I think they've kind of seen themselves. If you're into racing games, you're not buying a Switch, right? Unless you really want that port of Grid. There was a time, you're right, when Nintendo had loads of these games, but they were all niche. They weren't like proper road racing games. They were all a bike racing game, a water racing game, a speed race, and they never did that well. I mean, I loved, like, Excite Truck is one of my favorite games on Wii. I absolutely loved it. So when they announced the sequel, which is Excite Bots, I was extremely excited, and it did so badly, as did Truck, did so badly, they never released it in Europe. I've never played the sequel to one of my favorite Wii games for that reason. And it's just, I think that was Nintendo going, you know what? This isn't a genre. It's not a world for us to play in anymore. Because I'll let Microsoft can spend their hundreds of millions on the Forza franchise and
the AA racing game genre has sort of died a death in the last 15 years, isn't it? I mean, you think of like your Bizarre Creations and Split Second. There's some absolutely fantastic games in that genre that didn't get what they deserved in terms of commercial reception.
Slightly off the I'll change the subject, but the most underrated racing game of all time, in my opinion, Snowboard Kids on the N64. What a game. I was obsessed with it. I never got number 2 because I don't think
I've not played number 2
Europe. Oops, sorry, was it even released in Europe in the end? I don't know if it was.
I'm not sure, because I've not played the sequel.
But they found a way somehow to bring that back. Who made that? I can't remember. I remember as a kid.
Konami, I think.
Yes, you're right. It was Konami. I can't even remember. Yeah. Oh, bring back Pro Evolution Soccer. PES, the original versions. But anyway, go on. You going to say something, Chris?
I was just going to say, somebody mentioned, they did Diddy Kong Racing DS, didn't they, Andy? And that was actually made by Rare. That was actually the last game Rare made for Nintendo.
I think that's more. It's more like pieces for the evidence pile. Like, let's port it. It's around exactly the same time as well, like Excite Bots.
It was it was a little different. It wasn't a direct port, but
apparently they I didn't play it, but apparently they botched it a bit, right?
Yeah, it's a bit now.
So in terms of rumors then, let's speculate a little bit more. Xbox's big next gen showcase next week. Basically, what we expected from it on July the 23rd, it's going to be an hour of Xbox Series X next gen game showcases. Andy, do you reckon we'll see anything from the initiative? Now, we did a piece, obviously, you did a piece on VGC about how they could potentially be working on maybe the new Perfect Dark, and it might not be, of course, but what were you expecting?
I was told to expect to see their game. And obviously, a report's come out since from VentureBeat, I believe, saying that they've heard that there won't. So, let's see how that one plays out. I mean, obviously, in the pandemic, these plans can and do change on a week-by-week basis.
Yeah.
But certainly, from what I heard, the game the initiative is working on is supposed to be pretty spectacular. I mean, obviously, they've had 2 years in at the moment, so regardless of when it comes out, that's more than enough time for them to show something. It doesn't have to be a big playable demo.
We're building the studio at the same time, though, right, Andy? You'll know this. You'll know this from first hand.
Yeah, but we released that game by this point. So they can certainly show a 60-second trailer.
I love Platonic, but they're not a 200-person AAA game studio.
No, but you're making my point for me. Yes. They've had 2 years. They can, with God knows how many people they have there, they can show a 60-second trailer. And I've heard whether it's there or not is the debate right now. But the fact that it exists, and I know people who've seen it and they say it's spectacular, is not. So it is a thing. They can show it. And I believe, Matt Booty, the Game Studios boss, has even said that we will see more of that game this year. So there.
Well, the thing is, my theory on next week is GamesIndustry.biz got access to most of senior studios.
Yeah, so you can just tell us what's going to be there.
Well, I don't. But my point was that I think everybody who I didn't interview last week has a game next week. That's what my, because I spoke to Tim Schafer, who's just about to release Psychonauts 2. We know that's coming out. That's almost done. We had Brian Fargo, who's just about to release. That's an Exile. They're doing Wasteland 3. That's almost out. Who else do I have on that? I've forgotten who I spoke to. Mojang were there, and they just done Minecraft Dungeons. They've just had a game out. And I think, was that a lot? Oh, Fergus Urquhart from Obsidian, who've only just...
It's a very good theory.
They just released the Outer Worlds, so they don't have. They've just released a game. They've got nothing, and they would have released Grounded by their Grounded's out any time now. So that's another. So those studios have all either just released something or just about to release something. And then I think so. Who didn't I speak to? I didn't speak to Ninja Theory. I would have expected to have spoken to them. It's about the new studios. But they've got Hellblade 2 coming out. They're probably very busy putting together a trailer for whatever they're showing at next week, and then I just go through all the other studios that I didn't speak to, and I thought they've got a game during the showcase. Rare will be showing Everwild, of course. Halo will be there. Turn 10.
Will they be showing Everwild?
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Obviously, I hear lots of conflicting things about the kind of the state of that game. And obviously, they've said it's very early in development. But I know this, obviously it's been in prototype for a very long time. So I'd be interested to know, how much they have to show of that.
I don't know if they'll show. I don't know what they'll show, but I'll be surprised if they didn't. Rare Xbox announced a big AAA game that one of their studios are working on 6 months ago. This is their big, like, these are all the first party games we're working on. It's got to be there, even if it's just another trailer. What else?
Do you think we'll see Fable? The much anticipated new Fable?
Yeah, I think so.
What we expected
do you know they've got pretty much the whole Arkham City writing team working on that game.
On Fable?
Yeah, they pretty much all of Rocksteady's writing team are over there.
I'm hoping it takes a really, really dark twist then. That'd be interesting. Just Sandman in there somewhere, something like that. Any particulars? Do you think any surprises, Andy? I just want Banjo-Kazooie. Please do something with that. I don't think that's going to happen, is it?
I don't think that's going to happen. It could, but I don't think that's going to happen. I imagine you should expect plenty of surprises, right? Especially the really exciting thing. And Chris will go on about this. The really exciting thing about Microsoft at the moment is that Game Pass enables all these different types of games that you wouldn't have before, that would just be, really hard sales if you had to put them in a box and sell them for, $60. Yeah. So I'm quite excited to see what kind of games are enabled by that, because absolutely they should be able to do another Banjo-Kazooie now. It might have been a bad prospect, a difficult sell, for a $60 game. But on Game Pass, absolutely.
Yeah, and also with Game Pass, they want to bring in loads of new people, right? They can't sell just the same old people that want the shooter. I think in the interview I did with Spencer, he made comments about everyone think, Gears, Forza, Halo, Gears, Forza, Halo, Gears, Forza, Halo. They really want to break out of that. So I think we'll see a lot of surprises. I don't know if we'll see any, the thing is with Xbox is you think of their franchises that have died outside of the Rare IP. I don't think anyone's clamoring for a new Blinks or a Two Human 2.
That's the thing about the Rare IP now. It just seems perfect for Game Pass. They should be putting out another Viva Pinata.
Well, I heard that Phil is not a big fan.
Oh, really?
Great soundtrack, though.
The thing is, he's already cancelled one. They were working on Viva Pinata 3. It was an external studio, and it was a big Power of the Cloud thing that their initiative they had at the start of the gen, and that got cold.
Yeah, the thing is, I played Viva Pinata relatively recently on Rare Replay, and that game still holds up.
It's a great game.
I think they could easily do that. Yeah, I think I think I'm hoping to see something a little bit. I think the thing that I saw about the last Xbox event, which everyone criticised, was how very Xbox. All those games looked, you know, all really like.
That's how it felt for me as a admittedly Nintendo and PlayStation kind of fanboy. It just, I watched that and it felt exactly what you're saying. It just felt very Xbox. And I
mean, they've had enough time now, right, for their new identity to kind of produce stuff, and that's what I'm hoping that we'll see. I mean, what I found really interesting in some of your interviews recently with Phil Spencer, Chris, was that he talks a lot about kind of diversity and having games come from a broad spectrum of creators, and you just don't see that traditionally from Xbox. I mean, it's like you said from their event, it was just exactly what you would expect. I expect to see that sort of content he's talking about from PlayStation.
What's their bug snacks going to be? That's what we all want to know, really, don't we?
I mean, they're not gonna go, oh, here's a game where you play like an invisible boy that you see in the rain, like PlayStation did, or here's a game entirely FMV where you take her through a story, cinematic. You just don't. It just be his. I'd be really interested to see content like that from them.
Well, the thing is, we have started to see it a little bit, right? So I know Rare always do this sort of stuff. Rare always do the games on Xbox that don't look like Xbox games. So there's always Everwild. You had Grounded by Obsidian, who just went, that's Honey, I Shrunk the Kids game. I mean, they also got that Don't Nod game, don't they? Is it Tell Me Why or something like that? These are all starting to feel a bit. These don't feel very Xbox, and I think. We're already starting to see hints of this stuff playing out. And I'd love to see it really on show next week, because I think I always go to Xbox conference and there's always one thing that delights me. It's always the thing that nobody whooped at. It's always the Project Sparks or the South Park game or something that made me go, oh, that's amazing. That's the best thing I've ever seen. And then suddenly, oh, it's another game with a bow and arrow going through someone's neck and whoa. So what I'm hoping to see next week is, we're going to get, we're going to get the Xbox staples. We're going to get Forza. We're going to get Halo. We're probably going to get Fable. But I would love it to see something a bit bizarre.
What's your dream, Chris? What's your dream? You want to see, like, is there any old IPs that have been dormant for a while that you want to see brought back? If you're dreaming, you're a young boy again. You're excited. It's nearly Christmas, and what do you want?
The thing is, what I want and what I think I want and what I really want is a completely different thing. Like I want Microsoft, I want Phil Spencer to march into the Broccoli's office at Eon and go, right, you're letting us release this GoldenEye remake. You're letting us do it.
Yes.
You're right, sign the agreement, get it out, and then to go, all right. And then that's what I really want, which is a really rubbish thing to say. That I want a port of a 1997 game.
It makes a lot of sense. Who needs the kids? Make us happy.
That's what I'm like though. I'm excited about the Mario 64 remake more than I'm excited about the new console launches. It's true, but of course
we're old men now, mate.
But the reality is, when the game went at Christmas, when I play the new Spider-Man or whatever other new games are out, I'm going to love those more than the remakes that I play. It's just that me right now, I want the thing I liked before but shinier. But when the games come out, my opinion changes on that. But so for me, Andy knows this. I'm a Rare fanboy. Anything that's like what they used to do.
There's three Rare fanboys here. Exactly the same.
But I know that's not what Rare are working on, right? That's not their thing. They've got a big thing on their wall about how they make games that the world doesn't have yet. So they're not going to make a game that they made before. So they'd have to partner with someone like they're doing with Delilah on Battletoads. So so I'm not entirely 100% convinced that we'll get that sort of stuff. Which is, and you know what? When their new game is the biggest game they've ever had, you can sort of understand why they wouldn't be desperate to chase a sequel to Conquer, which has never sold anything, or Jet Force Gemini, which never sold anything.
Good for memes, though, at least for Conquer. So if that's a thing, that wasn't a thing back then, I guess. But that's interesting. I wonder how something like Conquer would be perceived in this generation, because you can get these little viral successes like Untitled Goose Game. It's funny, so people get into it massively. And even like I mentioned before, Bug Snacks has become a bit of a viral sensation because of a catchy tune and stuff. Like, is there a chance that maybe games like that 15, 20 years ago could actually find a bigger audience now because internet?
Crash Bandicoot sales, right? Spiral sales, Ratchet and Clank sales.
10 times more. Conker's 10 times more in personality than Crash Bandicoot, I would say.
Yeah, especially now. I mean, you're talking about Game Pass, etc. Not every game needs to have 10 million users, right?
Yeah.
To have any sort of merit.
Conker. Have you played Conker recently? That game would get cancelled by Twitter in a second. There's a character in that game, the professor, who sits in a wheelchair and zooms around. His name is Professor Von Cripplespack. right? I mean, you sit there and I didn't even know that.
Wow.
Only afterwards, only recently have I found that out. And I'm like, oh God. Like, oh my God.
I think
that game is too problematic.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I don't remember that at all back then, looking back.
I remember the Matrix and the Saving Private Ryan jokes, and it was hilarious, and the squeaky voice Grim Reaper and how hilarious that was. But that's a game that you would need to not just remake it, you need to redo it, and it could still be done. But that game, as I say, it was released at the end of the.
I mean, there's certainly a lot example of a lot of games that have a nostalgia associated with them that if they brought back, no one would buy them anyway, right? I mean, Crackdown being one example.
Yeah, there's loads like that. We'll wrap it up there, guys, because it's waffling away for a good amount of time now. I've really enjoyed it, though. It's our first ever episode. I think that went pretty well. Do let us know down in the comments if you enjoyed that and what you make of all that off the record chat today. Thank you, Chris, for coming on as well, and thank you for Andy. Of course, we'll be back next week with some other esteemed guests, of course. Let us know what you make of the episode. Make sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel as well. Give this video a like, and we'll see you very, very soon. Cheers, guys.